Hey there, welcome back friends. In this video we will again talk about exception handling in a greater detail. So let's get started. In our last video we have seen the usage of try, except and finally. Let us move forward and let us check a couple of more things. For example, under the try block again we try to take a input in a variable. Maybe the name of the variable is my variable myvar equals input, and we take the input as again enter a number. Alright, and in here we will try to cast the text into a int entity. Well, this is good enough, and this time we will again print, but this time what we will do, we will divide maybe 100 divided by to the variable which we receive. Alright, here we go. And now let us quickly add the except block, and in here we will say what? We will print either input is 0 or there is type error. Alright, so this looks good. And now let us also add the else part. So in here it would be like else colon, and we would be printing great, everything was good. Here we go. This is good. Let me run this. Let us enter a number as maybe 4, and it will give me 25.0, and take a note of the output. It will say great, everything was good. The reason why we are getting this everything was good because it is inside the else part. But for example, there is a exception. Maybe I enter 0 in here, then it would be like either input is 0 or there is type error. So there are two things which we can easily make out. Firstly, whenever there is error, then the exception block will be executing, which is nice, which is understood. But if there is no exception, there is no error, then only the else part will get executed. Now there is a difference between finally and else. Finally will execute anyway. It will always execute. So it would be like print finally will always execute. Here we go. So now for example I rerun this, and firstly I enter maybe 10, then it will give me output as 10.0, and it will say great, everything was good, finally will always execute. So take a note of this finally and else. So there is a difference between else and finally. Else will only execute if there is no exception, and finally will always execute. So let me show you. For example, in here I enter yes. In this case there is an exception, so the else part is skipped, it is not getting executed, but the finally part will always execute. Alright, let me copy the entire part and paste it in here. Now friends, we can easily make out that there could be two type of error. First error could be the type error, where we enter, let me show you, where we enter maybe a text value or maybe a symbol. In these kind of scenario there would be a type error, whereas there could be a scenario where we enter 0. Again there would be an error because it would be like divide by 0 error. Here we go. So again there would be an error. Now is there a way to add multiple except, and is there a way to give for example specific messages based on the type error or divide by 0 error? Is there a way? Indeed there is a way. Let me minimize this. Let me show you the built-in errors. So if you simply Google for built-in exception Python, you will be able to check out this documentation. Simply Google for built-in exception Python, and you will get the documentation from Google Docs, pardon me, from Python docs. And here is the documentation, and if you check this documentation, there is a huge list. You can definitely check out this list in a greater detail, and it will give you definitely a very huge list. There are many type of error which can be explicitly handled. Now for example, we have this zero division error. Let me copy this, and in here, for example, I use this. This is pretty possible. So this is nothing but the name of the class of that exception, and in here we can simply give a message like this: please enter a non-zero value. Here we go. Likewise, we can add a yet another except block in here like this, and this time we will make use of something different, which is maybe type error, right? And again, we can give a yet another statement, which would be please enter a number only. All right, so this now looks better, and we can get rid of this white spaces, pardon me, new lines, and this looks good to me. Let me run this. Here we go. Let me enter hello, maybe shift enter, and it is giving me some kind of error, which is weird. Let me check what is going on. Let me rerun this entire program by restarting the kernel. Let me run this. Let me enter val. Finally will always execute. There is some kind of error. Let me check. Alright, and indeed this is very good that we are getting this error, and the error is because I was expecting a type error, but indeed we are getting a value error. Now take a note of it. In here we have made use of zero division error and type error. There is no except block which is handling value error. That is a reason why there is a exception, right? So either in order to handle a default exception, we can either make use of a generic except block, or we can again make use of an exception block, which I will show you. But as of now, let me rerun this and show you one small little thing. In here, for example, I enter 0. In this case, it will say please enter non-zero value, because now we are getting this zero division error and this block is handling it properly. So this is great. Now again, let me run this and let me enter X. Again, there would be a crash. So now in order to handle it, we can do what? We can either add a yet another block in here, or we can like convert this type error to a value error. But first of all, let me show you a yet another thing, like except. This is a generic block, and in here let me print something went wrong, right? And let me rerun this and let me enter X again, and it will say something went wrong. Why? Because this is a generic except class where we are not specifying any class. As a result, it will handle all the exceptions. Alright, so this is interesting, and in here, for example, I make use of value error here now. Now take a note of it. Value error can handle the exception of a value error, but except type will handle all the exceptions. Then how things will work? Let me show you. This particular block will handle it. Please enter a number only. Now for example, I cut this except block and paste it before the value error. Will it make any changes? Let me show you. Let me run this. It will say default except must be last. Why? Because this is the default except block. This will handle all the exceptions. As a result, we have to and we need to place this at the end. Alright, let me rerun this. Alright, now for example, let me restart it once. Now for example, we try to make use of a base class. Is it possible? Now indeed that is possible. Let me show you. First of all, let me show you the base classes. Let me show you the what we say built-in exception documentation. If you simply Google for built-in exception in Python, you will able to check out the documentation provided by Python from docs.python.org. And if you click on the link, here is the documentation, and you can easily make out that there are like a huge list of exceptions which are available to us. And to start with, in this documentation you would be able to see the base classes. So there is this base exception class, which is the parent class, which is the base class of all the exception. Now there is this exception class again, which is the base class for all built-in exception except non-system existing exception. So there are like base classes again. So in place of the default exception block, we can again make use of the base classes, which is again possible. So again, if I run this and input X, for example, oops, let me retry. Here we go. Then it will again say, please enter a number only. Now again, for example, I cut this block and place it before the value error. Then will it work? Will it give a error based on the base class? Let me run this. Let me enter X, and it will say something went wrong. So in here you need to take a note of it. Whenever we make use of a base class and after that we have a child class, so the priority is always based on the sequencing. So in here you can easily make out that the error is something went wrong, even though there was a value error and we had a specific except block. So this is very important to place the exceptions properly, the sequencing matter. And in here we can easily make out that even though we have exact except block for the error, more generic output is in front of us because we have made use of a base exception class. So it is always good to make use of a default except block rather than a base exception class. In this case, we will at least get a error, right? So get rid of this and use it in here. Format things a little like this, and let me get rid of all the spaces and new line characters which are not required in here. And now let me retry it. Enter 0, a proper result. Please enter non-zero value. Let me try a string. Please enter number only. Finally will always execute. So now this program is working properly. Alright, so even though there are like small little things, but these small little things plays a very important role when it comes to programming a bigger, more sophisticated, industry grade applications. Alright, so this is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day and take care.